Time to reflect on the Rugby Championship then. 48 hours since the games actually happened, pretty much. And so the dust has settled, and time for some rational, calm thoughts on a Monday, which is what I'm going to attempt to do right now. And I want your comment in the comments down below. So please get stuck in, give the video a thumbs up, and hit subscribe as well. I'm Tim, this is Egg Chasers. And yeah, have you heard of the phrase Monday morning quarterbacking? Comes from American football, and it's the fact that it's a phrase that's used to describe the fact that everyone knows everything after all the games have been played. Everyone has the answers on what should have been done and could have been done after all the games have been played. Hindsight is always 2020. So I'm going to try and stay fair in my assessment of each team, but I am going to go through New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, and South Africa. Just some takeaways from the weekend, some thoughts, some of the things that were good, some of the things that were less good. And yeah, let's start with the All Blacks then, who have, for the first time in the Rugby Championship history, I think this is a correct stat, please tell me if I'm wrong, first time since it was the Tri-Nations, the first time in the four-nation Rugby Championship tournament that New Zealand have had 3 defeats. That's quite something, that. Also, I mean, probably the first place to start is what's been spoken about and written about lots, but it's worth repeating because it is incredible. New Zealand haven't scored in the final quarter of any match in this year's Rugby Championship. In fact, I think, well, on Saturday, the last points they scored were on 45 minutes, and they didn't score again after that, which is amazing. And that's amazing because when I think of the great New Zealand team, 2011 to 2015, that great Richie McCaw, Dan Carter, Ma Nonu, Conrad Smith team, all of those guys, you think of them shifting through the gears and putting teams to bed in the last quarter of games. It's quite strange to see this phenomena at the moment, and understanding exactly why that is. I guess that's the point I want to ask, is what's going on? What's happening? The number of times where in that golden era for the All Blacks, they would be behind on the scoreboard and you always knew they were going to score. Or a team's within a score and you think it might go down to the wire, and then 60 minutes hits and bang, off they go. Try, game over, you lose by 30. That's happened so many times. It must have traumatized so many fans of other nations. So what is going on now in the last 20? Is it leadership? There's a lot of rugby IQ and experience that is now not in the All Black team that was there at the World Cup last year with Retallick and Whitelock and Aaron Smith, to name a few. Is it just as simple as leadership? Is it the captaincy specifically? Are Ardie Savia and Scott Barrett good enough in the way that guys before them were at kind of taking hold of that team and driving the standards when it's most needed? Is it the bench and the quality of the bench, or even the use of the bench? Does some criticism need to go Scott Robertson's way at the use of the bench? It's been talked about in this Rugby Championship, not giving some guys minutes, some guys not even getting on the pitch in that second Springbok match in the first Springbok match in Johannesburg, wasn't it? And is that because the quality's not there? Is that because Scott Robertson strategically isn't up to speed at international level yet? I don't know. All of these things, I think it could be a little bit of all of these. Is it fitness? If it's always in the last 20 minutes, but they started the game so well, is fitness a factor? Could well be the case. Or is it just simply the mentality? And again, maybe that comes back to some of the massive names that are not in this current All Black team. I'm willing to concede that it's probably a little bit of all of that. On the bench specifically, I wonder whether the balance isn't quite right. When you think back to the Rugby World Cup and in recent years, you'd have guys like D-Mac coming off the bench and just tearing it up in the last quarter of games. And now with Anton Linnett-Brown, and it was Plummer at the weekend, wasn't it? Not and Perinara even, not the same feel coming off the bench. It feels a little bit safer. Do they need to just be able to roll the dice in the last quarter of games? Then again, you speak to South African fans and they're wondering whether, if you're going to have Marnie Lebok in the team, for example, maybe he should start so that you can then close games out. So this is what I mean about the Monday morning quarterback. And it's really easy to say, oh, they should have done this, should have done that after the fact. But there are trends that are going on, and there are clearly issues with New Zealand that constantly are a problem. And the second one of those that I would just touch on, discipline. 100% discipline is an issue that New Zealand have not addressed. They get cards more than your average, and it hurt them again at the weekend. It hurt them at the Rugby World Cup, and it hurt them before the Rugby World Cup. Think of Scott Barrett's ban. for the first couple of games. I just wonder, is there a bit of a mentality here? I see a lot of people complaining about refereeing decisions. I don't see enough chat happening about New Zealand needing to change what they do, because there's clearly a trend going on that they have not dealt with. And I'll just compare it to South Africa, where the tackle height laws, for example, came in. And Jacques Nienaber, who's got a former physiotherapy background, one of the things he did was condition his players, work on their flexibility so that they are able to get themselves in lower body positions. Consequently, in terms of tackle discipline, South Africa are right up there. And it's one of the reasons they won the World Cup, because in big matches, they did not have big yellow cards that cost them. And that's been a trend. It's a trend in the opposite direction with New Zealand. And it's something I think that they need to address as players and as coaches. And yeah, all of that said, you have to acknowledge, when New Zealand are on, how good they are. That first 15 minutes against Australia, 21-0 up, more than a point a minute, looking like the game was already over. And they didn't just score, they scored at will. They absolutely shredded Australia. The speed of the ball, the quality of the handling, the intelligent angles that were being run, they can do it. And when they deliver an 80-minute performance, watch out, because they've got some absolutely box office talents. And another thing I'd say is a positive for New Zealand, the breakdown. That's one area. Even when other stuff was going poorly, the breakdown was really good with Sam Cane and Wallace Satiti, and Tupu Vai was getting in there, and so was Tyrell Lomax and Cody Taylor. They got a lot. They attacked the breakdown brilliantly, and it really worked for them. So there's my assessment on New Zealand. Any thoughts from you in the comment down below? And let's move over to their opponents, Australia. Congratulations again to James Slipper on extending his record, well, becoming the most capped Aussie player. And they are improving, aren't they? There's definitely issues, and it's kind of the inverse. You judge Australia after 15 minutes of that game, and you think, oh my God, they've just had it handed to them by Argentina in the second half of that last match, and now look at them. They've lost the game in 10 minutes against New Zealand. They were absolutely dreadful, but then found a bit of resolve and a bit of something. And yeah, I mean, one thing I would say about Australia, they need to have their best 15 players out on the pitch in order to win a game. And I'm willing Australia to be good for World Rugby's benefit, for the Rugby World Cup coming up in 2027, for the British and Irish Lions tour next year. Really need a good Australia team. When they have their best players out there, they can be a handful. And they've got some good players playing in Europe that aren't playing for them currently. And even without them, they look like they can get something together. Guys like Fraser McReight, massive difference that he made to that team. But overall, they just don't have the squad, do they? They don't have the players. You can't honestly think of this Australia team, even on home soil, winning the Rugby World Cup in 2027. You can't imagine them putting 7 big performances back to back to back to back. It's just not going to happen with the squad that they've got. And they've been patchy from game to game and also within games. We saw them dreadful at the start and then cobble it together. And it's hard to kind of know how much was that New Zealand dropping off and how much was that Australia getting things together. What I will say is that I think Joe Schmidt, you can see the impact that he's happening. Look at that first Fraser McReight try. That was straight off of the training ground. Over the top. I can't remember, was it the 12 that gets it? And then inside to Nick White, inside to Fraser McReight. Clearly a well-planned and well-rehearsed training ground move. Maybe, I can imagine Joe Schmidt had maybe spotted something with New Zealand's defensive system that they can exploit. And when they actually deliver and nail it, on the money. And that's Joe Schmidt. Everyone talks about him being brilliant at analysis, brilliant strategically. So they're going to have intelligent, smart, strategic strike moves and approaches to the game that are going to work for them. And you can see Joe Schmidt might be a spot-on guy for Australia to have at the helm. They had a really good one of those in Dave Rennie and decided to ditch him. But here they are. They've got Joe Schmidt and where they are. The worry I have with Australia is, yeah, like I say, that they don't have the cattle, they don't have that depth. And when New Zealand sort the stuff out that I was just talking about a minute ago, when South Africa sort the stuff out that I'm going to talk about in a few minutes' time, then I'm not convinced Australia can compete with teams that are really operating at their top level. They need to be at their best and to have other teams against them with not playing at their best in order to win. So there is going to be a limitation to how high Australia's ceiling are. But let's take the impressive performance, after the first quarter of the game. Let's take that and take the positives from it and hope that they can build on it. And I thought the comeback was really impressive, and that speaks to a mentality. Sometimes rugby, and this is one of the things I love about this sport, sometimes it isn't about who's got the best athletes, who's even the best coached. It's sometimes rugby just comes down to the top 2 inches and who's got that mentality, who's going to take themselves to a pain cave, who's going to just do what's needed when it's needed and just go to some dark places in order to do it. And I think there's evidence that mentality-wise, Australia have got a little bit of something going on. So good on them for that. As for, let's move over to the other game and the other 2 teams, Argentina, and talk about coaching influences and Joe Schmidt, and I've talked about Scott Robertson already. Felipe Contepomi, you can see his attack starting to really bed in, and there were some moments in this game where I honestly think put any defence in front of Argentina and they're going through. They're going to score. When they are on, they are on. And what I quite like is the depth that they play with in order to get around the outside. There's a lot of rush defences in World Rugby at the minute. South Africa do it well. England have developed it. And Argentina know that they have got gas in their outside channels. Guys like Mateo Carreras, Juan Cruz Malia. And they've got these, sevens guys that Elizalde is sort of in the mix, isn't he? And there's that chap that's he's gone to play Rodrigo Isgro. He's going to be one that's on the scene in the years ahead. They have got wheels in wide channels, and they know with these rush defensives, if they can get it to an edge, they're going to be dangerous. And the way that they lost maybe 30 metres of territory in order to get the ball around the rush defence and then go was brilliant. And then, of course, when you start planting that seed in a team's mind, like with that try for Mateo Carreras, and then it was Matera on the left-hand touchline as well, when you start planting that seed of doubt in a team's mind that, oh my God, they're getting to the outside and absolutely killing us, then the holes start to open up in the middle because you've stretched the opposition that little bit more, and all of a sudden you had Oviedo, the big number 8, just charging through a hole in the middle, Chocobares and Albanors. And so Felipe Contepomi's attack looks like it could be really, really fun. And he spent time at Leinster, and it very much looks like a lot of the shapes that you see from Leinster and Ireland, but they have got serious, serious gas. A little bit like Australia, I do always feel with Argentina, they need to have their best players on the field every match in order to deliver. And for that reason, when it comes to World Cups, while they've done really well to get to semi-finals, it's hard to see them breaking further beyond that because they're going to have to back up game after game after game after game in order to win. And that's always been the big challenge for Argentina. And we're going to see that challenge again now because unlike South Africa, who have a huge pool of talent that they can draw on, and they left a load of guys back in South Africa waiting for Argentina in Nelspruit, South Africa are going to have to go back to back with largely the same group of players, all that travelling as well, and they're going to have to deliver. And that's the big challenge for Argentina. Can they do that? Also, I would say, much like I talked about with Australia, there are Argentina's big challenges game to game, but within games, again, they got completely shredded by South Africa in that first quarter. What was going on then? Halfbacks, I will say, a lot of people have talked about Marnie LeBox kicking. Albanors missed some kicks, but how good did he look generally around the park? And halfbacks has been a bit of an issue for Argentina for a while. They look like they can have a couple of guys there to move forward with. So Albanors look really good. So that's Argentina. Thoughts down below in the comments. Chalked off the first 3 teams. Let me finish with South Africa, the Springboks. And, that's Argentina. There's the Springboks at the full-time whistle, gutted with the defeat. And I guess, as I say, Monday morning quarterbacking, you always have all the answers after a game. Let me just, disappointing defeat if you're a Springbok fan. Oh, by the way, this is a Charlie Hoffmeyer school rugby shirt. If you've been wondering who this is, yeah, I got this given to me when I was in South Africa recently from the lads at Charlie Hoffmeyer. I saw their fly half, Luan Guilherme, at Craven Week and had a chat with him. and then he's been signed for the Sharks, and he was in the Springbok under-18 setup. Hell of a player. And anyway, at the Cape Town Test match, he came up with a shirt and went, "There you go, Tim. This is from the lads at Charlie Hoffmeyer." So nice one for that. Right, yes, South Africa. It's easy to have the answers after the fact, but let's just point out the fact that I'm absolutely sure South Africa are going to win the Rugby Championship in the end after the result in Nelspruit next weekend. And assuming that is the case, they will have won a Rugby Championship, which is beyond what they have managed in years gone by, generally. They've only won one Rugby Championship, I think, in the last 12, and the last one was in 2019. So winning a Rugby Championship doesn't happen that often. So they're batting above average. As frustrated as South African fans may be, and I understand probably are, about what's going on, you've got to remember, they're actually batting above average currently. And they've won 4 out of 5 games, and there's a good chance they win 5 out of 6 with a home test match. And all the big guns you'd imagine are going to come in for that one in Nelspruit. So we'll wait and see after the game. But there are nevertheless things to talk about with South Africa. And I just want to head this one off at the pass. Let's talk about Manie Libbok and that kick to win the game. I've already mentioned Argentina, Thomas Albanors. Everyone's talking about what a great game he had, and he did. He missed 3 kicks. He missed a couple of kicks to touch. No one's talking about that because they won. And again, there's lots of issues that South Africa should and will and guarantee 100% Rassie Erasmussen and his coaching team will be doing video analysis sessions. They'll be doing meetings with the team today, and they will be talking about the areas of the game that they didn't take care of, that they should have taken care of. But quite often, when you win, as fans, you just kind of ignore that stuff and you just sort of think everything's okay. So if Manie Libbok kicks the kick, they win the game, Rugby Championship won, everyone's happy. But there are still, regardless of whether that kick went over or not, win or lose, there are issues that South Africa need to address. And so let's touch upon them. Firstly, 10 changes. Is the experimentation that's going on in selection worth the cost? That's a question. I'm not giving an answer. I understand it because the age profile of the Springbok team, so many of that squad are going to be 35 or 36 at the next World Cup. Turnover of players is 100% needed. I guess the question is, how many do you do at any one time? I've talked about this before, so this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking. I've said this before. The best opportunity you're going to give players to play well and to get the most out of to get the most and highest quality level of experience at international level is having just a few players come in to what is an already established side. And maybe you could argue that 10 players from the 15 from game to game and then back again presumably for this weekend, maybe that is too much. But it, as ever, with this South African team, with Rassie Erasmus, it's always about the bigger plan, as Australia in 2027. But are there too many at once? That is a question. Also, I guess, I guess you can change a load of players, or, well, I know. I'll come back and say, is it a case that either you change a load of players or you change your style of play, but you don't necessarily at the same time change a load of players and your style of play? And that's maybe what we've seen from South Africa during this Rugby Championship. This Tony Brown influence, faster game, more ball in play time, slightly less focus on set piece and maul and things, although that's still a massive weapon that has and will continue to be used. More adventure, more width, more coast to coast. Is changing the style of play and chopping and changing the personnel so much at the same time, is that where South Africa occasionally get unstuck? Should it be one or the other? I guess that's easy to say after the fact. Again, I understand why South Africa are doing what they're doing in terms of the style of play, because look at the talent of the guys that are of a slightly younger age profile. Look, you look to people like Sasha Feinberg and Ngomzulu, like Apaleli Fassi, like Damian Willemse, who's still, in his mid-20s, and you think this is a side which could be dynamite, and maybe, unlike the Boks of the last decade, where the pack has been the undoubted strength with some box office talents in the back line, maybe now, in the next 10 years, the absolute strength of this Boks side is going to be in the back line with a really good set piece as well. And maybe that's an identification that Rassie has looked at and thought, we need to evolve how we play in order to get the most out of the players that are going to form this team for the next couple of World Cups. So I understand what they're trying to. And here's another thought. Do you need to find what the boundaries are before you then come back to how you're going to be moving forward? And I wonder if that's also what we're seeing. We're seeing the Boks really go for it with their attacking play, turning the dial right up to 10. Only come the next World Cup, they'll have found where their limitations, where their strengths are, what they can hope to do, and then they'll turn it back down to maybe a 7, and everything will be in place come the next World Cup. I think that's probably what's going on. And as a result, I think there should be some patience with what's happening. That said, actually, with the game at the weekend, it was noticeable that South Africa went a little bit tighter and a little bit slower, actually, because I think the conditions, 36 degrees, some of those players look absolutely battered. Handré Pollard looked like he aged about 20 years during that match. So a couple of other thoughts on South Africa. Leadership. The ability to solve issues on the field as it's happening. Line out, for example, wasn't working. No one really grabbed that by the scruff of the neck and sorted it out during the game. When you look at the World Cup team that won last October, there were captains everywhere on the field. And when you take a few of those pieces out of a team, like Pieter-Steph du Toit and Bongi Mbambi and Siya Kolisi, obviously, and Eben Etzebeth was on the bench, and Willie Leroux in the backfield, and Faf de Klerk. And when you take these players out, are the next generation taking that leadership responsibility and sorting things out as it's happening on a game? Maybe that just comes with experience. I don't know, but one to watch. And for all of that, and for all that's been said, there were very, very good players who are the experienced ones in the team who were not at their best. It's not all about the new faces and the new blood and the next generation, and Manie Libbok missed that kick. Malcolm Marx, I mean, what a player. Line out was an issue. By his very high standards, his set piece was poor. Marco van Staden, by his very high standards, defensively, he looked like he was run ragged. Kurtley Arendse, defensively, incredible. Attacking, what an amazing weapon. Not at his best. So there can be a lot of reasons for that, but I think it's important to acknowledge quite often just the light will get shone on Manie Libbok. The light will get shone on some of the newer faces. But when you assess that Springbok performance, the defeat can be laid at the feet of, well, everybody. Firstly, the coaches, but some of the most experienced players, the people you expect to lead when things aren't going well, were actually sometimes the root of the issue. So, but that said, I'm coming back to it. Look at how they played in that first 15 minutes. 17-0 up, scored a couple of incredible tries. Game should have been dead and buried. At that point, you close it out and just squeeze the life out of the opposition. And that's what will disappoint South Africa the most, because they played brilliantly and then foot off the gas, yellow card given away. That changed the complexion of the game and they never really recovered. That said, they've won 4 out of 5 and they're more than likely to win the first Rugby Championship since 2019. And South Africa generally haven't played that well or got their win percentage up between Rugby World Cups. The true judgment of South Africa in 2024 will be at the end of the November tests. They've got to go to Murrayfield, they've got to go to Twickenham and elsewhere, and at the end of that, then you can sit back and take stock on what Rassie Erasmus is doing, how Tony Brown's system is working. For example, it's raining outside at the minute, and the weather's been terrible this weekend in England, let me tell you. So the conditions, maybe when they come to the UK and the UK, won't be conducive to play the way they want to play. So maybe we'll see South Africa go back to how they play and we'll be able to judge them then. So in the fullness of time, we'll get it. Just trying to add a little bit of balance and calmness to proceedings, given that, like I say, a lot of people are guilty of Monday morning quarterbacking. Coming back to that phrase. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. I enjoyed going over those games again. Please tell me what you think in the comment down below. I will see you on the next video. There's going to be URC, Premiership, and more international rugby coming through this week. So yeah, hit subscribe on the channel so you don't miss anything, and I'll see you on the next one.